all month long about increasing the impact. It's about this next phase of our church. And so it's a series we're in all month long about increasing our impact. And Matt started last week kind of introducing it, and he shared with us about some different aspects of that. And we're going to review it again today. But one of them was about supporting Luke in his new journey, his new adventure, because he is jumping in with Youth for Christ Campus Life to reach teens in this community. And they're a nonprofit that's going to be focused, they're all over West Michigan, but they're going to be focusing on helping teens in life and their relationship with God in our community. And so he's in the fundraising stage, not on staff yet, but he's got to raise funds to do that. So we thought, man, what if our church could help him, because we want to help teens in our community as well. So as you're getting ready to do this and are kind of jumping in on this, what's like maybe a big part of it for you as to why you're even jumping into this kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a huge need to be able to help teens in our community, all over the world even. Just a couple statistics, 1 in 10 teens have nobody in their life that they can trust. 40% of teens today feel left out or alone, and suicide is the second leading cause for teens today. So there's this huge need to be able to step up and be that, hope and share the love and joy that Jesus has to offer. So.
Yeah, there is the need there. And so we thought, man, what if us as a church, Luke's been a part of our church and he's in the band, you've seen him a little bit maybe, but he's jumping into this, like what if we could support him along the way? And that's a part of that Increase the Impact Giving Project. Again, you're going to hear more about that in a minute when Matt comes up. But today, as a part of the Increase the Impact, we're going to be talking about generosity, being generous with our lives, and what does that really look like for each one of us? So Matt's coming to share, but then Luke and I are coming back up at the end. We're going to share some of our own thoughts about that and what that means for us. So we'll see you back here in just a few minutes, but Matt's coming to join us.
Well, hey, good morning again, and welcome to those joining us online as well. We are in week 2 of our series, Increase the Impact, and we're talking all about kind of the next phase for our church. And we've been kind of celebrating too. It was our birthday for our church last week. It was our 21st birthday, so we've been celebrating. And one of the things that I love about our church and what we've been doing for so long is when we do things out in the community or around the world to make an impact. It's like those are such an awesome thing that we get to be part of. But I love it when we can find someone that's actually doing that in our church and come alongside of them and then help them make even a bigger impact. Like this summer for our summer service project with our network teams, we had Gideon and Lauren. They're part of our church. Lauren just got baptized not that long ago. That was last month. And they have a neighbor that they were trying to help out. It was a lady who was elderly, and her adult son has to be living with her, and has disabilities, and so she has to care for herself, but also care for him. And so they've been doing things to help her out, like mowing the grass or things like that. And so they nominated her, and we got to come alongside and do like a big project at their house and take care of a bunch of stuff. It was awesome to be able to go do that and come alongside of them. Or at Christmas time, we had one of our Journey teens, Esther. She said, "Hey, one of my friends had a fire at their house and they lost everything. Can we do something about that?" I'm like, we can definitely do something about that. And our Journey teens actually did like a little fundraiser to get things off their Amazon wish list, and we had some money to support them as a church. And it was awesome to say, like, here's someone who's looking for a way to spread kindness in our community, and then they're already doing that, and then we get to come alongside and make an even bigger impact. And it's just so fun to be part of that and to support someone and to see what that does, not only for the people we get to impact, but what it does for those people in our church that are already doing that. That's one of my favorite things as a church, and this is what we've been talking about. We want more of that. And so we've been talking about this next phase for our church is a phase where we want to increase the impact. And so we've been talking about how God wants to work in and through our lives in our church. We looked at this verse last week, Philippians 2:13. It says, "For it is God who works in you and to will and to act. So this is the through you part, to fulfill his good purposes. Like we get to experience God working in us, to experience his goodness in our life. And then when we let him work through us, it's about sharing that goodness with others and experiencing his good purposes in our life and through our life. So we want to do that as a church and as individuals. So this is our prayer that we want to pray all month long. And so I encouraged you last week just to pray this with me all month long. So this is our prayer. God, increase the impact in my life, increase the impact through my life, and increase your impact in and through our church. So it's a simple prayer, but man, if we all come together and pray this and open ourselves up to God, he can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. So we're asking him to work in and through our lives and our church. And one of the ways that he does that is when we choose to live generously. This is something we have talked about throughout our history as a church. And when we are willing to kind of give ourselves away, God can do great things in and through our lives. And so if we want to increase the impact, we want to increase the generosity of our lives and our church. I don't know if you've done some of these projects, or maybe you've gone on one of the trips. Like we talked about that last week, a lot of the trips we've gone to, whether that's Africa or Peru or Mississippi or Vegas, or all these different places we've gone to make an impact. And what I hear from people when they either go and serve in our community or if they've gone on one of those trips, they feel like it made not only an impact on the people we served, but they feel like I got more out of it than what they did. Like this is more meaningful for me. I don't know if you've experienced that or ever done that, but like maybe you just wonder, like, why is that? Like you go and you give of yourself, your time and your talents, and maybe even support someone with money or something like that. Like you give of yourself in that way. And then all of a sudden, it's like you feel like I'm getting more out of it than the person I'm serving. Why is that? Well, we see actually Jesus talks about this. In Matthew chapter 16, we're going to take a look at the words of Jesus. And the Bible is broken up into two parts. There's the Old Testament, which goes from creation and leads up to the life of Jesus. And the New Testament begins with 4 accounts of the life of Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew was actually one of his disciples, so he got to hear Jesus speak these words firsthand. And so let's see what Jesus has to say to his disciples and to us here. Matthew 16, verse 24, it says this: Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself and take up the cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good would it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what could anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done." Jesus kind of proposes this question. It's like, what are you worth? What is your soul worth? Like, what are you trying to gain in exchange for your soul? Like, there's a lot of things that we try to do in life to make our life better. There's a lot of things we do in life to try to enhance our life. But Jesus says, don't forfeit your soul, because those things will just leave you empty. And he says, if you want to follow me, if you want to be my disciple, he says you have to actually lose your life. If we're willing to lose our life, then we actually find life. If we give ourselves away, we actually gain so much more back. It's kind of this backwards thinking. Not only do we see this from the words of Jesus, we see this all throughout scriptures. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 11, verse 17, it says this: "Those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves." If we're willing to spread kindness, to be kind to other people, not only does it impact them, but it says it benefits ourselves. It says this a few verses later in verse 25. It says, "A generous person will prosper, but whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." Excuse me. So it says here, this idea of generosity. Generosity can make our life actually enhanced. When we choose to live open-handedly, to be generous with our life, to give our life away, it actually advances our life. So we prosper. And it says, if we're willing to help other people, to be kind to them, to refresh them, as it says here, it has not only an impact on them, but it impacts our life as well. There's something more to this life when we choose to live generously. And so throughout our history as a church, we have talked about this. To live generously is about living with open hands, saying, here's my life, kind of like that song we've been singing all this month. I'm kind of abandoning myself. Here's my life, God. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to lose my life in order to find it. I'm going to live with open hands. We've talked about creating margins in our life so we have space to invest in other people. We've talked about looking beyond ourselves and spreading kindness and being part of something bigger than ourselves. If our life is only absorbed in doing things for ourselves or our immediate family, I think we're missing out on something bigger in life. These are the words of Jesus. If you're willing to lose your life for me, you'll find it. And if we're willing to do that, that's kind of the cost of being his disciple, is saying, I'm going to follow after God. And as I experience his grace, his mercy, his love, I'm going to extend that now to others. That's really what it means to be a follower of Jesus and to follow after him, is to deny ourselves and to look to the needs of other people. You know, as a church, we want to do this. And as we're heading into this next phase, we've been talking about this. If we're going to increase the impact in this next phase of our church, we need to increase our generosity. And so there's been some things that we've been kind of thinking about and planning about. We've been in kind of this season of transition the last few years. And as we're heading to the next phase, we're dreaming about what more can God do in our lives and through our lives and in our church and through our church. And there's some things that we have been thinking about, ways that we could increase the impact, but it will take some generosity for us as a church. And so in going into this next phase, there's a few things that we want to do to increase the generosity as a church. Here's a few lists of things. The first thing is we're going to sponsor Luke. We heard him sharing about that. He quit his job, and he is raising support, and so we want to support him and come alongside of him so that he can do this and invest in teens and be the light in these public schools and help reach teens in our local community. And so one of the things is sponsoring Luke. Another thing is we send out mailers about our church as a way to share hope. So there's people out in our community that have a lot of those questions that we just watched that video about. And it's a way for us to help people come and explore God, to share hope with them. Also in our community, one thing that we noticed is there is a food void in the Fruitport area. Like there's food trucks and other resources to provide food for people that are hungry and people in need. But there's a lack of resources available in the Fruitport area. So one of the things we thought, man, this is something we can make a difference about. If we're willing to be generous and be with open hand, is provide food for people in need. Another thing, we have Adam takes our Journey teens to winter camp and summer camp. And what we have noticed is that when the teens are there, they're kind of unplugged from the rest of their life. They kind of get away, and it's a chance where they can really hear from God. And we've seen a number of teens begin a relationship with God or get baptized while they're at camp. And so we want to continue to see that happening. And if we can send more teens, make it easier for them to invite a friend because maybe their friend would be covered to go to camp. Or Adam is working with Campus Life. We see a lot of these Campus Life kids in. Like we want to make it more accessible for kids and our students to get away to camp and a way to hear from God. There's also a few other things we would like to do as part of this next phase. One is we've been in this building now for 5 years, and there's a few things that we wanted to do in our kids' wing that we weren't able to do. Some upgrades that we are looking at. Also, we're looking at we could use some new carpet down there in the next few years. There's some stains and things like that, and it's kind of wearing out in some spots, which is normal when you have a big group of kids in a room with all of their winter boots or things like that they're tracking in. And so we want to provide a great environment for families so parents feel that they're bringing their kid to a welcoming and a safe place. And so those are something we're looking at. We're also looking at, this isn't so much around the generosity thing, but we're looking at an outdoor venue as part of this giving project we're going to be talking about. And we do church on the lawn every summer. That's become something that we always do. And it wasn't something we were necessarily planning on, but this is something that has become part of our church. And so we're looking at providing a structure out there that could also provide some shade for when we're out there. Also maybe some trees and some things like that to make it a great experience for when we're out there, but also make it a great experience and a possibility to make some other revenue by making a place that would be worth people renting and using in our community. So, which is also a great opportunity to not only maybe get some revenue back, but also to get other people on our campus and a chance for us to build some relationships with people that we might not normally have the opportunity to do that with. And so But again, most of these things you see are things that we're going to be doing in the community or giving away. It's increasing the generosity for our church. And so we have this giving project. And so in the seats in front of you, there is a brochure. I just want to encourage you to grab that a minute. And if you take that brochure and you open it all the way up, right in the middle, you'll see about our giving project. Normally at Christmas time, every year we do the Hope Christmas Project. It's a way for us to give the gift of hope at Christmas to our global partners. We're kind of rolling the Hope Christmas Project into the Increase the Impact Giving Project. Again, normally we'd roll out the Hope Christmas Project in November. Obviously, this is a little early, but it all kind of rolls in. And you'll see there's kind of 4 different levels. It's on the screen as well as in the brochure. The 4 different levels of the giving project. The first level is really our Hope Christmas Project. And what we would normally do is giving to our global partners. Last year, we gave a gift to the church in Peru that we sponsor and the Compassion Project. They built a second level to their building, and they can use those 2 rooms they're building as a way to provide some counseling for families and kids that are in need of that. Also to provide a room that can be training of some skills like sewing and some other things like that. So we're excited about that. The other part is Pastor Jackson down in the Dominican Republic. We have sponsored him the last few years. He works with Haitian refugees that come across to the DR to find kind of safe haven and a better place to live, but they're often treated like second-class citizens. But he is ministering to them, and he's doing a great job. We gave an update in August. He's doing an amazing job down there. He's actually started 2 other churches. He's discipling people and creating a whole network of people to reach these Haitians. So he's doing a great job. So part of this project will go towards him. And then we obviously have Luke as part of that as well. That'd be like our normal Hope Christmas project. Level 2, though, you'll see is more about investing in our community, whether that's in the mailers to invite people to come explore God, or the food trucks to help those who are hungry and in need. Level 3 is all about kind of the next generation, sending teens to church camp, investing in our kids here. And level 4 is all about that outdoor venue. And you'll see at each level there is like a dollar figure. And so it will go towards those new things, but also it will allow us to continue to do what we're doing. The great things that we've been doing throughout our history that we celebrated last week, this giving project not only allows us to do some additional things, but it also firms up our finances. We've shared this, if you've been around, we don't talk about it all the time, but something that we have to talk about occasionally as an organization is we've been in the red kind of through this transition, and that's something we would like to not be, because we can't do that forever and continue to function. And so this project allows us to do some new things in this next phase to increase the impact, and allows us to continue to do what we've been doing. At each level, up to half the money will go towards those new things, and the other portion will go towards continue to do the great things that God's been doing in and through our church. And so we're trying to do whatever we can to be good stewards. Another thing we got to talk about is there's a couple things that we outsource, and they're both with our finances. We outsource our bookkeeping because it allows for extra security and extra accountability, and so there's just not like one person here handling that, and so we do that, and we also outsource. We have this church management software that also includes our online giving. And so those are a couple things that we outsource. And we've noticed the companies that we've been working with continue to get kind of big business, and they've increased their costs. And so Mark has gone through our finances and kind of looked to see where we can save money. We found that if we switch to a different company on both of those things, that can actually save us thousands of dollars a year. So I know a lot of you give through recurring giving right now, and you do that online through PushPay, but we'll be switching that over to this new church center platform, which again will save us thousands. So that's something we're going to ask you to do, to switch over, because that will allow us to be better stewards of our money here, and allow us to, we want to, again, do whatever we can to firm up our finances. We try to keep a very lean budget so that we can do more to be generous as a church and out in the community. So we're asking you to consider your part in this giving project. We have these giving levels. If you look in the brochure, it has it right next to the giving project as well. And the giving levels are something to consider. Maybe what can you increase your giving? Maybe you don't give at all, and this is a chance to maybe jump in. Or maybe you set your recurring giving a long time ago and haven't looked at it in a long time. This is a chance to maybe reevaluate, or this is a chance to say, like, I'm going to increase because I want to make an impact. If we're going to increase the impact, we need to increase our generosity. We need to increase our giving. And so you see there's kind of 4 levels that kind of tie into the giving project. To be a world impactor, we're asking to increase $30 a month. And that allows us to do kind of that first level of supporting our global partners and supporting Luke. You'll see the second level, hope dealer. And you'll see there it's idea of impacting our community and sharing hope in our local community. There's a generational giver as the next level at $120 a month. That allows us to do those first 2 levels, but also to invest in the kids and teens. The last level is about mission champion, allows us to do all of them. So we're asking you to consider maybe taking a step to increase the giving. I'm asking you to do that right alongside myself, and as we are considering that, just to think about that as an increase per month. And again, it might take some sacrifice, but $30 a month, like if you got a family of 4, that's like a trip to Starbucks these days, right? Like $30. Or we got dinner last night, and we had our family of 4 and a couple extra tag-along kids that were with us. That was $120. And so we're asking you to maybe sacrifice maybe a meal out, or maybe something else that you might normally do in a month to make a sacrifice in order to be generous, in order to make an impact. So we're asking you to do that, but it's so much more than just this giving project. This is more about what God wants to do in our lives and through our lives. So we don't want to lose focus of that. So let's look at this as another verse. 1 Timothy chapter 6, it says this. It says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant and not to put their hope in wealth." Now, you might say, well, I don't need to pay attention to this. I'm not rich, right? You're like, I'm not rich. Well, if you have any money in the bank, if you have $1 in the bank, if you have any kind of savings account in the bank, you're actually among 1% of the richest people in the world, because most of the world has nothing. And so while you might not be rich, we might not see ourselves as rich. We have resources. And it says, whether you think you're rich or not, the fact of the matter remains that we shouldn't be arrogant. We should look to see how God has blessed us and how we can be a blessing to other people. And we don't want to put our hope in our wealth. We're putting our hope in God, as this verse says. Why don't we want to put our hope in our wealth? Because, as it says here, it's so uncertain. But put your hope in God, who richly provides for us everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, it will lay up your treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of life that is truly living. It says here, we can have a life where it's truly living, not a life where it just feels like it's empty or void, a life that has, that we find life in the words of Jesus, a life that has purpose and meaning. It says, how do we do that? He says, command them to be rich in good deeds, to be generous, to be willing to share. To say, here's my time, here's my talent, here's my treasure, and saying, God, I'm going to live with open-handed to you. I'm going to be rich in what I do and how I use my talents. I'm going to use my time and what I have to honor you, to serve others. I'm going to take what you've given me, the resources I have, and allow you to work in and through my life. And it says, if we do that, we'll find ourselves in a spot that's truly living. This echoes the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 6. He said this, "Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves can break in and steal, but store for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin don't destroy, where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And that's really the fact of the matter, is that this is more about what God can do in our lives and through our lives. It's about our heart. And if we're willing to say, God, I want to follow after you, if we're willing to deny ourselves and to lose our life and to be generous, to live open-handed, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous, to be willing to share, then we get to experience God working in our hearts and in our lives, to experience true living, a life with meaning and purpose. So we have these time, talents, and treasures. What are we going to do with that? That's really what this is about, is saying, God, here's what I have to offer. Can you work in my life and through my life? You might feel like I don't have a lot of talents. You might say, I don't have a lot to offer, but you know what you can do? You can pick up a rake and go rake someone's leaves. We're going to be doing that in this next month, and you never know where that's going to take the impact. You don't know what kind of impact that will make. You don't know what difference that might make in them, or the conversations, or what that might lead to down in the future. You might say, I don't have a lot of treasure, but if we're willing just to offer God what we have, like we just talked about, maybe just skipping Starbucks, like God can take that and do something with it to impact others. And especially when we take all that we have and we combine that together, the impact even grows because we're part of something bigger. Now, it's going to mean sacrifice. It's going to take something. Generosity is that. It's being willing to be unselfish. It's going to cost you something. And when you think of like time, talent, and treasures, for some of us, our time is even more valuable than our money. And we don't have a lot of time, but it's going to cost us differently. Or maybe we don't have a lot of treasure. That is a big sacrifice. All those things cost us sacrifice, and it's different for everyone. But that's part of generosity. Are we willing to deny ourselves, to make a sacrifice? And if we're willing to do that, God can work in us and through us because we're living with open hands. So the question is, what are you willing to do with your time, your talent, and your treasures? Are you willing to create margins for others in your time? Are you willing to serve others, to take the abilities and the gifts that God's given you? Are you willing to make an investment like what we talked about in this giving project, or maybe even beyond that, to allow God to use what you have? Because if you're willing to lose your life, you'll actually find it. So Mark and Luke are going to come in just a minute, but we have this kind of question that I want to leave you with. What would it look like in your life? What would it look like for you to offer God your time, your talent, your treasures, to take steps to be more generous? Because as a church, we want to increase the generosity. We have that list of things we want to do, but it means that we need to come together and do this together. And if we come together, the impact continues to grow. We increase the impact. So what does that look like for you in your life? I want you to just take a minute and think about that, and Mark and Luke are going to come and debrief that with us.
I think about that question. It can require a lot of thought and probably deserves a decent amount of time to process a little bit. But Luke and I just want to share a little bit with you guys kind of what this means for us personally, like how we would answer that question is like, what does it look like for God, to work through your time, talent, or treasure? And for me, when I think about this concept, or even the concept, or even like the idea of being generous, the thing I keep coming back to is, what do I need to let go of in my life, or what needs to shift that sets me up to be generous, or sets me up to let God be able to work in my life and my time, talent, or treasure? And like for the example of time, I hear this a lot, and even today I was just chatting with some people before. It's like, how's it going, or whatever. It's like, oh man, I'm just so busy. We're like so busy and got all this stuff going on, and I feel that way too in my own life, and like this whole thing of being busy. And the reality is there's like so much we do in our waking hours with our time that it just feels like it's almost just packed, right? Any of you guys feel like that too? Like there's these things that we have, these responsibilities. Sometimes it's maybe in our jobs, or relationships, or family, or taking care of things in our home, responsibilities. It just takes time. But then in addition to that, we have other things that we just not just need to do, but things we want to do, right? And like we want to go places and have some fun, or there's entertainment, or some fun activities, or time to get away, or vacations. There's like all these things we can do with our time. And really the end result of it, we just kind of feel like sometimes, man, my schedule's just packed. There's no space. There's no margin in my life. We just keep going one thing to another. And I think for me, it's really hard for God to work in my time when it's packed full and there's no space. So maybe one shift I would like to make is thinking about, how do I just do less and not pack the schedule as much and create some margin for God to work through my time so I can be generous that way? The same is true with my finances or money. Jen and I, over the years, we've tried to have one of these family values of let's spend less so we can give more. Spend less so we can give more. And that's the same idea as like, it's easy to just drop money, isn't it? I mean, for a few clicks, you can have anything you want in the world delivered to your doorstep. And here it is. And then as soon as it's there, you can go get something else. It's never ending what we can get delivered and brought to us. Just a few clicks and a credit card number. Or like Matt said, eating out. It just gets so expensive. Like in all these places, like we can spend. Everyone will take your money, right? But it's so easy just to spend a lot of our money. And it's like, well, there needs to be some margin there. Because if I'm maxing out like my spending, like there's no margin to be more generous or to give. And so we try to like, okay, what's it look like to back off on spending, have some more margin there, maybe cook more food at home or not have to go to all these places or whatever. And it's like, well, that just sets us up to be able to give more. And we haven't figured that all out, and it's an ongoing evaluation. But for me, when I think about that question, like, okay, God, work through my time or my money, like I feel like I have to make some shifts or maybe some different habits that actually sets up that space for God to work through those. So do you have any thoughts on this or none? I mean, you're up here. So
yeah, I know. I got to say something here. You're talking a lot. No, I'm just kidding. But no, so I have, a little bit of talent, a little bit more time, not as much treasure, but I did find out today I'm one of the richest people in the world. So thank you, Matt. But yeah, so I had to kind of have that conversation with myself, what can I give up in turn for, spending that time? And I like to go hunting and fishing, and sometimes I'd, do that on Sunday mornings or Sunday nights. But I gave my time and that to, in the band and with the youth group. And the blessings that come from that have just been amazing, the amazing relationships, the people that I get to hang out with, and the kids at youth group, and the impact I get to make there has just been more of a blessing than I can I could have even imagined. So
I think one other thing that kind of goes with this is not just making that space or that margin, but it's just an awareness. Like as we go throughout our day, there's just these moments that we can have wherever we go to think about how could I be generous with my time or my talent or my treasure in the workplace or in my home or in my community, in my church, in my neighborhood, wherever it might be. It's like it's not even just shifting some things in your life. It's just this awareness. And for me, that kind of comes back to my own prayers. Like, okay, God, help me to be aware of what's going on around me. Because sometimes I get so inward focused, and kind of the whole point of the message today was like, how can we reach out and get beyond myself? And sometimes we need like I can't do that by myself. Like I need God to help me. And so my prayers, like, okay, God, help me to look beyond myself and have this awareness as I'm going. So any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like taking that step of faith, right? We can say we can trust in God or, give our life to God, like it says in Matthew. And but it is taking that step of faith and just trusting in Him. And it's not going to be easy. A lot of times it is hard because we do have to give up something that we want, right? But it is all ultimately up to God, and it's amazing when He comes through. So.
And the other side of that step of faith is that's where the good stuff happens. Like when we experience blessing in our life, like I might share just a little bit of like when we go and we help somebody, or maybe we give to something, like we feel like we're giving something up, but we're actually the ones that like we get refreshed, and it's good for us. And I think that's just partly because we're living out what we're created to do. Like the way He's created us is this built-in DNA to be generous, and that's where we're going to find some of our best days of living. And if we're not living that way, it's like we think, well, what's wrong with my body? What's wrong with my mind? What's wrong with my life? It's like, oh, well, maybe I'm not living that all out. So for me, that's part of it too. So anyway, that's enough of what we're saying. I'm sure you guys have your own thoughts, and just encourage you to continue to process that question of what does this mean for you, but what would it look like for us as a church? Like if all of us in our church like live that way and believe that, like that's where God can really work in and through our lives in this community. That's what we want to see happen. So will you pray with me? Let's ask God for help in this together. Jesus, we come before you, and we know we can't do this alone, and the way you've created us and have made us to look beyond ourselves and to be generous is like we're made for that. But yet we sometimes hang on really tight to our stuff and our time and our money. And so we're asking for your help. We know this to be true, but we just need your help because it's not easy. So help us to loosen the grip and open our hands to be generous and to offer everything we have, everything that we are, and offer it to you. We know that you've made us for that. Help us as a church to live that way together. In Jesus' name.